My in-laws surprised me with a family meeting and demanded I hand over my late father's inheritance to my husband. I smiled, opened my bag, and said, "Funny, I was just about to surprise you too." Their faces went pale when they saw what I had. I should have seen it coming. Every red flag was there, waving in my face like a neon sign. But I guess I wanted to believe that my husband's family, my in-laws, weren't as bad as the stories people whispered about them. I thought they were just traditional or old-fashioned, not entitled vultures waiting for an opportunity to pounce. But wow, did they prove me wrong? So, a little backstory. My dad passed away about a year ago, and it wrecked me. He was my rock, the one person who had always believed in me no matter what. He wasn't perfect, but he worked his entire life to make sure I had a future, even when it meant sacrificing his own comfort. When he passed away, I was devastated, but I also found out he had left me a significant inheritance. Not billionaire level, but life-changing money. I didn't tell my in-laws about it. Not because I was hiding it, but because, frankly, it wasn't any of their business. My husband knew, of course, and while he made some offhand comments about how we could use it to buy a bigger house or invest in his business, I shut that down quickly. This was my money, my father's final gift to me. I had plans for it, plans that didn't include funding my husband's pipe dreams. I thought that was the end of it. Then came the family dinner. My mother-in-law invited us over for a Sunday dinner at their house. Totally normal. We did this at least once a month, and while I never enjoyed these get-togethers, his parents were always making little digs at me. Why don't I cook more? Why don't I dress more feminine? Why don't I support my husband's ambitions more? I figure I can endure another meal for the sake of family harmony. But the moment I stepped into their house, I felt it. That weird, heavy tension in the air, like everyone had rehearsed something before I arrived. My husband was unusually quiet. My father-in-law had a smug look on his face. My mother-in-law? Oh, she was practically glowing with self-righteousness. We sat down, and after a few minutes of fake small talk, my mother-in-law cleared her throat and clasped her hands together like she was about to say grace. Instead, she hit me with, "We need to talk about your father's money." I swear, I actually laughed because I thought she was joking. But then I saw the way my husband's shoulders tensed, the way my FIL leaned forward like a predator about to strike, and I realized, oh, this wasn't a conversation. This was an ambush. I set my fork down and leaned back. "Excuse me." My mother-in-law sighed, like she was the patient one here. "Sweetheart, you've been keeping a large sum of money all to yourself when your husband, the man you vow to support, is struggling. That's not how marriage works. We're family, and family shares." I turned to my husband, expecting him to step in and shut this down. But he just stared at his plate, silent. Not a single word in my defense. My father-in-law chimed in, "Look, we're not asking for much. Just enough to help your husband out with his business, to help with some home renovations, maybe even to put towards a family vacation. You wouldn't deny us that, would you?" Oh, oh, they thought they had me cornered. I folded my hands on the table, keeping my face neutral. "So let me get this straight," I said slowly. "You all planned this little meeting behind my back. You waited until I was sitting at your dinner table, thinking I was here for a normal meal, only to demand my inheritance, money that my father left specifically for me, to be handed over for you all to spend as you please?" My mother-in-law's smile faltered. "It's not just for us. It's for your husband, your marriage." I glanced at my husband again. "And you're okay with this?" He finally looked up. "It's just, you have so much, and I thought, maybe you could just help out a little. It's our life, not just yours." I stared at him. This man, the one I had supported emotionally, financially, and physically when times were tough, was actually sitting there, expecting me to hand over the only thing my father had left me. I took a deep breath, then smiled. And that's when I reached for my bag. "Funny," I said, my voice calm and measured, "because I was just about to surprise you too." I pulled out the folder I had brought with me, set it on the table, and slid it toward my husband. As soon as he opened it, his face went pale. My mother-in-law gasped. What? What is this? I tilted my head. Go ahead. Take a look. They all stared at the papers in front of them, realization dawning on their faces, their confidence crumbling. My mother-in-law snatched the papers off the table, her eyes scanning them frantically. Her face twisted with confusion, then shock. What? What is this supposed to mean? She stammered, gripping the pages so hard her knuckles turned white. I leaned back in my chair, my expression calm. But inside, I was bracing for the storm. It's exactly what it looks like. My husband, no, at this point, let's just call him James, was still staring at the documents like they were written in another language. This can't be right. His voice was hoarse. You wouldn't actually, oh, but I would, I interrupted smoothly. James's hands trembled as he flipped through the pages. My father-in-law peered over his shoulder, his face darkening as he read. My mother-in-law was still stuck on the first page. Her eyes snapped to mine. You're leaving him? Silence. Then my father-in-law let out a dry, humorless laugh. This is a joke. This has to be a joke. He turned to James. Tell me she's joking. James opened his mouth, but nothing came out. I tilted my head. Does it look like I'm joking? Because sitting in that folder in black and white was a divorce agreement. Signed, sealed, ready to be filed. And next to it, a separate legal document ensuring that my inheritance remained completely and entirely mine, untouchable in the divorce. My mother-in-law was the first to snap. She slammed the papers down on the table. How dare you? She shrieked. How could you even think of doing this to my son? To our family? I didn't flinch. How dare I? No. How dare you all ambush me like this, as if I'm some piggy bank waiting to be cracked open? James finally found his voice, and it was dripping with desperation. Babe, let's just talk about this privately, okay? We don't have to do this here. I turned to him, my eyes cold. You had every chance to talk to me privately, James. Instead, you let your family corner me, thinking you could pressure me into handing over my father's money. So no, we will do this here. His jaw clenched. You don't have to make a scene. I let out a sharp laugh. I'm making a scene? Your mother just screamed at me across the dinner table. I gestured at the papers. And this isn't me making a scene. This is me being prepared. My mother-in-law was fuming. She turned to James, gripping his arm like she was trying to anchor him to the floor. James, do something. My father-in-law scoffed. Unbelievable. What kind of wife just leaves her husband over something like this? Marriage is about sharing. Oh, you mean like the way James shared this little family scheme with me before you all try to blindside me? I shot back. He had nothing to say to that. James was still grasping at straws. We can fix this. We can go to counseling. I don't want to fix this. My voice was firm, unwavering. I wanted a partner, not a parasite. My mother-in-law let out a strangled gasp, like I had physically slapped her. How dare you speak about my son like that? After everything he's done for you. I let out another humorless laugh. Everything he's done for me. I turned to James. Please enlighten me. What have you done for me exactly? He floundered. I supported you. I raised an eyebrow. Financially? His mouth opened, then shut, because we both knew the answer to that. For the past few years, I've been the one paying the majority of our bills while James chased business idea after business idea, none of which ever panned out. I had covered our rent, our groceries, our everything, all while he assured me that his next big idea was right around the corner. Now, he was trying to guilt me into giving up my father's money to fund another one of his doomed ventures. My mother-in-law had gone from shock to pure rage. You can't do this. You can't just walk away like this. Marriage isn't something you just throw away when it's inconvenient. I stood up, gathering my bag. Oh, I agree. That's why I've thought about this long and hard. And I realized that my marriage ended the moment my husband sat silently while you all tried to rob me. James shot up from his chair. We can fix this. He reached for my hand, but I stepped back. You don't have to do this. I gave him one last long look. I really do. My mother-in-law's voice rose to a shriek. You're going to regret this. You're throwing away a good man and a good family. I met her gaze, my expression unreadable. No, I'm finally saving myself. And with that, I turned and walked out the door, leaving them behind in stunned silence. The papers were still on the table, the truth laid bare for them to see. And I didn't look back. I wish I could say that walking out of that house was the end of it, that they took their loss with dignity and left me alone. But people like my in-laws don't go down without a fight. The call started that night. First, it was my husband, no, my soon-to-be ex-husband, leaving voicemail after voicemail. His tone switched between pleading and furious, like he couldn't decide whether to beg me to come back or curse me for daring to leave. Then came the messages from his mother. She went full guilt trip mode, telling me I was breaking her heart, that I was a selfish, greedy woman who didn't understand the meaning of family. She told me that my father would be ashamed of me for not supporting my husband. That one almost got me, almost. But then I remembered that my father had spent his entire life warning me about people like them. He would have been proud of me for finally standing up for myself. My father-in-law took a different approach. He sent me a bill. Yes, you read that right. A detailed list of everything they had ever spent on me since I married James. A few wedding expenses, some family vacations, even a dinner from 3 years ago. The grand total? A little over $5,000. At the bottom, he wrote, since you believe in keeping things separate, you can pay us back what we generously spent on you. We expect payment within a week. I laughed so hard I cried. I sent him a single response. I'll pass this along to my lawyer. Expect a response soon. That shut him up. But James? He wasn't done. A few days later, he showed up at my apartment, knocking like a maniac. I almost didn't open the door, but a part of me wanted to see what he had to say now that the dust had settled. I cracked the door open, but didn't let him in. His eyes were bloodshot, and he looked like he hadn't slept in days. We need to talk, he said, his voice hoarse as I crossed my arms. We already did. He let out a shaky breath. I was an idiot, okay? I should have stopped them. I should have stood up for you. I didn't say anything. I miss you, he continued. We can fix this. We don't have to go through with the divorce. I'll tell my parents to back off. I'll get a real job. Just don't do this. I studied him for a long moment, waiting for that familiar pull, the part of me that had always wanted to fix things, to make excuses for him. But it wasn't there anymore. You didn't just let them ambush me, I said quietly. You were part of it. He shook his head wildly. No, I thought if you heard them out, you'd understand that I should give you my father's money. He fell silent. I sighed. Go home, James. His face crumpled. Please. I shut the door. That was the last time I saw him. The divorce went through without much of a fight, mostly because my lawyer made it clear that if James pushed for any of my assets, we would bring up his financial records. Given that he had been unemployed for most of our marriage while I covered our bills, he knew he was in no position to demand anything that I moved on. I invested my inheritance wisely. I started fresh with no one dragging me down. For a while, things were quiet. James stopped trying to call, his family went silent, and I thought, maybe, just maybe, they had finally accepted it. I was wrong. It started small. My mother-in-law posted a very pointed Facebook status about how some women were selfish and ungrateful, how they used good men and threw them away. The usual nonsense. I ignored it. Then mutual friends started reaching out. Hey, I ran into James. He said you just blindsided him with the divorce. You know, I always thought you guys were happy. He told me he begged you to work on things, but you wouldn't even try. Even my old college roommate messaged me. I don't know if you care, but James's mom has been telling everyone that you stole his money and ran off. Just wanted you to know. That made my blood boil. I didn't take a single cent from James. He was the one who had drained our accounts, chasing one failed venture after another. I had been the one holding us together financially. And now, he was out there playing the victim. I decided to confront him. I knew where he'd be. He still went to the same bar every Friday night with his friends. So I showed up, walked right up to his table, and said, "We need to talk." His face turned pale when he saw me. "What are you doing here?" I dropped my phone on the table. "I want you to repeat everything you've been telling people. Right now, while I record." His friends went silent. James shifted uncomfortably. "I don't know what you're talking about." I let out a sharp laugh. "Oh, you don't? So you didn't tell people I stole your money? That I abandoned you?" He ran a hand through his hair. I was upset. I might have said some things. "You lied." I cut in. "You tried to ruin my reputation because you didn't get your way." One of his friends cleared his throat. "Wait, she didn't take any money." James glared at him. "Dude, stay out of this." "No, I think it's a fair question," I said, crossing my arms. "Tell them, James. Tell them how I paid for everything while you sat around waiting for your big break. Tell them how your parents tried to strong-arm me into handing over my inheritance." His jaw clenched. "Yeah, that's what I thought." I picked up my phone, grabbed my bag, and turned to leave. But before I walked away, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "The only thing I took from you, James, was my life back." After that, the rumors died down fast. His friends, most of whom had believed his sob story, started questioning him. The people who had been gossiping about me, they stopped. And as for James himself, well, I heard he moved on quickly with a woman who just happened to come from a wealthy family. His mother-in-law. I guess some things never change. Me, I focused on my future. I invested. I traveled. I reconnected with people I had lost touch with because I had spent so much time catering to James's ego. And most importantly, I never looked back, because sometimes the best revenge isn't just getting even. It's getting better. So that's the story. After everything went down, I can't help but feel a mix of relief and guilt. On one hand, I'm happier than I've ever been, and I don't have to worry about my ex-husband or his family anymore. On the other hand, there's a part of me that feels bad for not trying harder to make it work, especially since James was my first love. But I just couldn't keep pretending things were okay when I was the only one holding everything together. I know people are going to say I should have given him a chance to change, or that I should have been more patient. But after everything they tried to pull with my father's inheritance, I just couldn't. So here's the big question. Am I the a-hole for walking away, especially considering everything they put me through? Or did I do the right thing? I really want to hear your thoughts. Have you ever had to stand up to your family for what's rightfully yours? Share your opinions down in the comments. And like and subscribe for more stories like this one.